Welcome to Pitmaster, an Old Virginia Smoke podcast. I'm your host, Luke Darnell. We have something a little different for you this week. One of the best backyard pitmasters in the country league recently jumped up to the pro division and made a lot of noise while he was there. This is a fun podcast with a really great guy, so please join me in welcoming to the podcast and to the pro division Steve Dotson from D'Qued BBQ. While you're enjoying this podcast, please share it out on your social media and also be sure to like the podcast on the service of your choice. Every little bit helps. Thanks, and enjoy the show. All right, so anything you say now will be forever on the record.
I appreciate the warning.
So, we are here today on the OVS Pitmaster podcast with someone who I've met pretty recently in my life, but who's become a very good friend of mine, a trusted confidant, a mentor in a lot of ways. But this is Steve Dotson from D'Qued BBQ, also known as the Cookout Coach on YouTube. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing all right, Luke. How are you this morning?
I'm great, man. I'm great. So we just spent a nice, lovely weekend together.
Yeah. No, other than the wind, it was beautiful.
Yeah. Other than you nut dragging me 2 days in a row, it was awesome.
I mean, you showed me how to do it at certain points, so you knew what was coming. You knew what the potential was, at least.
I have always known that it's been coming because you're an amazing cook and you do a great job. I just didn't expect it to happen your first time out the gate.
Yeah, that was a little surprising to me and Johnny as well.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, Steve has been a backyard cook for 3 years. Is that right? 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, 3 years. I mean, technically, we only did 2 contests in 2018, but yeah, I count that as 3 years. We started learning at that point, so the record starts.
Yeah. To rewind a little bit, so Steve came and cooked with me down at the Whistle Stop competition in Alabama, and we were hanging out with Lee Hickle and Brad from Getting Basted a while, and Brad kept calling Steve Backyard Steve and making fun of him and stuff for cooking backyard contests. So Steve decided to jump to the pros and did so this past weekend in Galax, Virginia, which, man, number one, super proud of you for doing that. I know it's a huge step.
Yeah, I appreciate it. There were certain contests that existed were the only reason I was hanging around in the backyard for as long as I did. But yeah, thanks for letting me come and help you at Alabama. And yeah, I think when Brad figured out that I had 6 backyard GCs, the gloves came off and I became Backyard Steve. And I told you recently, my boss's teammate texted me after the calls on Sunday and said, "Hey, good job, Backyard Steve." So I'm pretty sure that's stuck now.
Yeah, Brad was like, I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to make fun of him. And I'm like, nope, go after him. Let's get it. Yeah. Let's get him up.
Yeah, he apparently had no idea what you tell me on the regular.
Exactly. Well, Steve here cooked this weekend in Galax, and I was very, very pleased to be sitting next to him when he got his first call ever. Then in the next category, he got his first category win ever, and then got his first top 10 ever. And then the next day, he won the brisket category, which to me, we'll get into that a little later, and finished 3rd overall. And it was just such a pleasure to be around that and to see your reactions and Johnny's reaction. Johnny's your brother, and he's a lot of fun. And just to see your guys' faces, and I normally don't talk this much on this, but I'm just super excited for you.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. So Travis, a buddy from Golden Blue Barbecue, he texted me yesterday. He goes, "Has it sunk in yet?" And I went, "Yeah, I think so." And then I started rambling off a whole bunch of stupid ideas about it. And I was like, well, you know what? I guess it really hasn't sunk in because it still feels fake. Like, even though I was glad that we had the opportunity to have 2 days in a row, but so for a little validation, but it still feels like a little bit of imposter syndrome at this point.
Not at all. Now you're in the big leagues, pal. It's pretty exciting. And, when you've done this for as long as we've done it, you sit there at awards and you start, normally you'd like to count your own finishes, and you're doing math and trying to figure out where you're going to land overall. And once I was out of the game, I started doing your math. And I walked over to you and I was like, you're either first, second, or third, dude. Depends on how it shakes out. Depends on the gaps. And you were like, no. And I was like, yeah, especially with, you weren't in the running until you won brisket. And brisket is the biggest differentiator in terms of score because that's where the gap from first to like fifth is the longest.
Right.
So when you won that, I was like, we're in the game.
Yeah, I knew that about the gaps with brisket being the big decider, but I didn't realize ribs and chicken were so close. I figured with 2/8 in that, but I was too far behind. I was still thrilled. Don't get me wrong. I was like, oh man, we got a 6th place overall the day before. We might break top 5 today. We might be 5th. But when you came over and said that, like the wheels just started spinning in my head. I was like, there's no way in our second comp ever that we RGC this thing. Or, 3rd place was just amazing. I guess I'm still not over it.
No, and you know what? That I remember our first contest where we got our first calls. It was in Louisa, Virginia in 2013, and I'll never forget it. You never forget that first call up to the stage, and you're like, and it's an expensive call up to the stage as well.
Sure, absolutely.
Well, let's get into it because you're now on the big stage, and this is so much fun because I've wanted to do this podcast for a long time, and we needed the right circumstance, and I've been waiting for you to go pro for a long time because you're such a great cook, and you're a great student. That's the one thing that I think we should start with, in terms of getting information in and processing it. You seem to have a knack for that. What's some of the things that you've done that have really helped you up your game?
A couple of things. One is because I message you constantly about it, and I used to always start with, "Hey, sorry to bother you," but I practice not as much as some people I've heard say they practice, but in the off season, I'm usually practicing something at least once a week, and I cook a lot. And to the point of at our first contest in Urbana this year, when everything was done, you told me, you said, I'm kind of worried about you. And I said, why? You said, well, because when it comes time to go pro, you practice too much and Wagyu briskets are expensive. And I said, I know. So that's the biggest thing is just putting in the work. But the other thing is, growing up, like a lot of us, I played a lot of competitive sports and I was always very coachable. It's one thing if I'm stupid because I don't know, but once you tell me, if I choose to remain stupid, that's a choice that hurts after a while. So you learn to stop doing that when you play competitive sports. So basically, the two things that have happened to me that have made the biggest change in how I cook and how I handle myself in a contest is you and I became friends. I don't know if you knew that was going to happen or not, but I sort of willed that to happen. And you came down and did a backyard class for me at the house. And we've been in contact a lot. And I bounce a lot of stupid ideas off of you. And you tell me if they're stupid or if they might work. And the other thing is before that ever happened, I took a class from Barbecue Champs Academy of Corey Mikes. And that sort of set that sort of level set my flavor profiles. And he did some things in there that just showed me how to check for tenderness before you and I talked that got me on the right track. And then sort of you were able to help me fine tune those things in person. So those two things together really, like at this point, I'm a little bit afraid to take more classes because I don't want to muddy the waters too much.
And that's something that everyone can be guilty of. It's something that you have to be able to take somebody else's situation and what they cook on and everything and see things that they do, but then figure out how that applies to your cook. And it's a really tough thing. Like a lot of people think that they can just say, I'm going to take this rub and put it with this injection and this sauce. And, because all these three things have worked in 3 different circumstances, that's not the case.
Right. And then on top of that, as I'm a habitual cooker changer. and I'm pretty sure you've called me out on this podcast without actually saying my name.
True.
But yeah. That I have a problem with that. Like, God forbid I would have stayed with the same cooker for all this time. But no, I've literally changed cookers every single season. Although after this last weekend, these little Char-Griller gravities kind of have a special place in my heart.
Absolutely. And they always should, but in a couple years you'll get bored and you'll
It's kind of what I do. It's a problem.
or Char Griller will come out with something else awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So this question I've been dying to ask you because I know that you have a lot of habits, rituals, and routines that you've established for yourself when you're competing. So one of my favorites is the one that I'm involved with. Whether you're cooking somewhere or I'm cooking somewhere or we're both cooking in the same place, if there's not an early morning text that says "Good luck, fucker," then the day it isn't going to go right. And I think I started that. Did I say it first?
So I was thinking about that this morning. This is how it started. It was after the class down here. It was me and Travis from Golden Blue, another backyard team. And you referred to us as your fuckers at Urbana. When awards were running a little long, you might have gotten a little too deep into the Elijah Craig. You came over and you threw your arms around us and you whispered in a low, growly voice, "You guys are my fuckers." So then I believe it was the North Carolina comp this year. You also gave Matt Barber a lap dance waiting for those awards to start in Urbana. But
that did not happen.
I believe it. We'll check the record. But I believe in North Carolina, when you GC'd this year, early morning, I sent you a text that said "Good luck, fucker." And after
that was in Somerville.
Yeah,
that's where I am this week. Yeah,
I'll make sure to send you the text. But yeah, so after that happened, because even though I don't want to be, I'm extremely superstitious when it comes to this. The next Friday night before one of your comps, I asked you, "Hey, do you want me to send you a text in the morning?" And you replied, "You better." So it's just been a thing.
So what else is there? I know there's lots of other things, dude.
Oh God. So I honestly tried to get away from some this year, and I started losing. So there's proofs in the pudding there. But I mean, there's so many, Luke. It starts with when I leave my house. About 10 minutes down the road is the gas station where I fill up. When I stop at that gas station, Johnny fills up. I go inside. I get there's a 2-for-1 7-Eleven random brand of bottle of water. I get 2 Home Industry hot pepper cheese pepperoni rolls, which if people aren't from our area, pepperoni roll, I can't explain it to you. Just if you're ever in a gas station, go ahead, Luke.
Oh, pepperoni rolls, dude! So I'm down in Charleston, South Carolina right now, and I'm staying with my friend Leanne, who's from Wheeling, West Virginia originally. And last night, watching the baseball game, she's cracking out pepperoni rolls in the oven. It's super amazing.
Yeah. So if you're ever at a gas station and they have pepperoni rolls, the way you pick which one to get is you get the one that looks like it's just in a Ziploc bag with like stenciled letters on it. That's going to be the best one. So where I'm at, that's a company called Home Industries. I get 2 hot pepper cheese ones, and I get 2. They're like strawberry and cream croissant things. So it covers breakfast, covers lunch, and it covers water on the trip. Those 3 things have to come with me out of that gas station every time. When I get to a comp, it's the same dinner every time. It's jalapeno cheddar bratwurst with Oliverio peppers on it, which again, if you're not from here, Oliverio peppers are hot peppers in like a marinara sauce. With provolone cheese on them, and a bag of Doritos. You got to have a bag of Doritos, and you got to eat them the night before. I usually have, it's not part of my ritual, but it's just because I like it. I usually have a bourbon and sweet tea that evening just because it's delicious. I always wear the same. I have like 2 or 3 pairs of shorts that are winners, so they get worn. Same hat. I do the 922 toast with the backyard group, and that happened by accident. Mainly, it started because Johnny and I just didn't feel like going to the 922 toast back when we were backyarders because we were backyarders. Then other people saw me doing it, so the backyarders started coming to my tent, and I'm pretty sure it's a ripoff of T-Max toast. But I do it, and if I don't do it, we don't score well. Literally this weekend, Travis was down. He was the only one that came down, so I changed it in a little bit for him and I. And yeah, I'm not going to get into the specifics there because that's proprietary information, but it worked very well. It involved brisket. I mean, we have to listen to Pandora's 90s Country on the way home. Then the two most recent things are probably the Good Luck Fucker text with you, and every morning Dave Murphy makes the most delicious Bloody Marys, and I gotta have one of those.
They are spectacular. The Bloody Mary from Dave Murphy. And I mean, I recently got added into that rotation, and now I take Bloody Mary stuff, and if he's not there, I make one. But now I see that all of you have your own special cups, and I have to graduate somehow. I don't know if I need to buy Dave something or give him a back rub or whatever. I don't know, but yeah, I see these special cups now, and I'm like,
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how exactly that happened, but yeah, Johnny and I both have a special West Virginia cup with our name on it, and that's Dave's way of, if you don't bring the cup back, you don't get any more. So if your cup's there, he'll fill it up, but if it's not, you're out of luck. Bring it back.
I always take my red moonshine cup back because I don't want to go cross with Pops,
No,
and I don't want to not get my Bloody Mary.
That's what he's got whatever you need. If something goes wrong, like outside of the cook, he's probably got it to fix it. So you want that guy in your corner. And he makes delicious Bloody Marys.
And he's from West Virginia, so that makes him awesome.
Oh yeah.
You touched on music a little bit. What's on during the cook? Do you guys listen to music while you're cooking, or is it pretty silent?
So I don't usually turn on music during the cook. Usually I'm close enough to somebody who's playing something that it's all good. And I'm pretty music agnostic. I can get down on pretty much anything, but I do have a random playlist that I play all week up to the competition. I guess this is still a superstition. I listen to the whole thing multiple times through all week while I'm trimming, while I'm driving to work, while I'm driving to go pick up stuff. And it's just got everything on it. Like Lim from Lim's Meat Varnish came over during a double rib cook this year, and I was by myself and nobody's playing music, so I had it on. He goes, Steve, is that Fetty Wap playing? And I was like, yeah, man. It's I mean, it goes from that to Luke Combs to there's Eric Church on there. There's rando stuff like Lizzo's on there because Good as Hell just gets you in the right mood. I mean, there's a whole bunch of random stuff on there. There's like Panic at the Disco stuff. It's all either centered around getting yourself in the right mindset because, like, again, back to that competitive sports thing. I'm fine losing, and that's one of my biggest pet peeves is when a grown man can't take a loss. But I don't ever show up. It sounds terrible, but when people ask me and really want to know, I tell them I don't show up, and I don't think anybody ever should, to set up to take second place in anything. Like, I'm coming to win. If I lose, that's fine, but we're not going to go with that mindset. So everything on that playlist is either to get in that mindset, or it's something that's attached to a memory about barbecue. Like, for instance, we did the Shade Tree at the Jack, so I've got several songs on there that are about Jack Daniels, or I remember specifically from that trip. So it's that kind of stuff.
The Jack Daniels, that's funny that because you got to go to the Jack in 2018.
Yeah, that was so to be clear, it wasn't the big one, it was the Shade Tree. I don't want to trigger anybody with that one, but it was the Shade Tree. And it was my second ever competition. And if people that didn't know, the Shade Tree was just a pure lottery draw. So you threw your name in your hat, they might pick you, they might not. But yeah, our second ever competition, we got to go cook the Jack Daniel's Shade Tree, and that was one of the coolest things I've got to do without knowing all the cool stuff I was supposed to do.
This cracks me up. Expand.
Okay. So we went down there. We showed up a day early. So we got down. We rented an RV out of like Franklin, Tennessee, which is like an hour away. Showed up on Thursday, and we walked around the town square, which of course nothing's going on until Saturday. But it's a neat little place. We walked around. I saw some of the names I knew, like the Barbecue League had just came out. So like Brad and Tim and or not Brad and Brad and Tim and Blaine were like pulled together, and I was like, okay, I know who those guys are. I saw Cosmo walking around. I knew Chris Lilly and Keith Route, but like I didn't know a lot of these people. I remember walking past Boomerang, going, "Oh, that's an interesting name," not knowing at the time he was like him and Brad were going at it for number one. Um, but yeah, so that's pretty much it. I saw people. It felt awesome. I went up on Barbecue Hill for a little bit, but I'm a pretty early to bed guy, so I came down pretty soon. Didn't do Miss Berry Bobos. Didn't get a barrel head with my team name on it. Didn't get a barrel head at all. I was like, there'll be plenty of time to get swag after the contest. Of course, after the contest, it's all the larges and up are sold out, and I'm definitely not a medium or smaller. Didn't get a bottle engraved. Didn't do the distillery tour. Yeah, it was a hot mess, but it was a lot of fun.
It's still one of my favorite stories because, yeah, I was, for someone that had waited to go for 10 years, I probably spent way too much money on all that shit, but I did. And it was a lot of fun. And it's a special place for sure. Getting to go there is truly an honor. And yeah, well, that's for another episode. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a really cool contest. I wanted to go because I figured it was, some of the best. I wanted to see it because I knew it was special, but I also assumed it'd be good competition. And that was for up until this year. That was the only contest in the backyard where we didn't get our name called. We had one earlier this year that was, it happens. But for a long time, that was the only one. We finished with like 12th overall and a 12th place chicken. So we were just outside of getting our name called, but didn't. So that one was that was an experience that caused us to get better because you don't want that to happen again.
Right. That's always the goal, is to hear the name at least once, and that is still our goal. Every competition is, you can't take anything for granted. You're not just going to walk in and do well just because you did well the week before. You have to maintain your focus, stay in your lane, and do what you need to do. So we've talked a lot about all the great successes of Steve Dotson and D'Qued BBQ. Let's talk about some failures. Have you had a failure during a competition that is a favorite failure of yours, where you really learned something that has helped you be so successful?
Gosh, yeah. So most of my failures to this point have all revolved around being too rigid with a timeline. So, you hear folks like Tuffy or plenty of other people say that there's a difference between being a technician or whatever you want to call it, somebody who can follow a set of plans, and an actual cook. And so, like, I've had it happen a few times this year with chicken, and I'm still learning because it got me a little bit this weekend, but it just kind of worked out. But like, my chicken plan is, for a long time, was purely by time. I didn't check temp until I was done. But it happened a few times this year where I would get done. I was still messing with learning the new cookers because I got these gravities in the middle of the year. And like, I don't say like an idiot, but like a child, I put them into the program just right off the bat. So I was still learning them for the exact times and temps for the chicken. And there were a couple times where I would get done, temp them, and knew they weren't going to bite good. Like, they were acceptable. The skin bit through, but it was just a terrible bite. But I would keep rolling with it, when in actuality, I always hit the front of the window. So I had 10 more minutes. I could have blistered those things and got them better. But it was, I think it was Welch this year. I just let him go. I was like, you know what? I always score pretty high in chicken. We'll run this. It'll be okay. We'll recover in ribs. And I ate it hard, like not DAL, but almost DAL. And from that point, I was like, you idiot. You knew you had extra time. Be a little bit more fluid with things and just let it roll.
Yeah, it's great to have a timeline and to have a process, but you have to make those calls. And you also have to, and I'm very guilty of this too as a pitmaster, in that I never ever want to be even close to being late. And so, I'll just be like, all right, hurry up, Kim, do this, do that, let's get it out the door. And then I look at the clock and I'm like, what? Calm yourself. Like,
Yeah.
You have 7 minutes, it's a minute and a half walk. Why are you rushing her? You're making her uncomfortable and stuff like that. So yeah, it's no good.
Yeah. That's what I try to, I guess I do it subconsciously now, but I'll get like that. And Johnny's always good about, like, I won't even look at the clock. I'll have the clock behind me, and he'll be standing on the other side of the table, and he'll give me the updates on the time. And we'll be getting close to done with whatever category, and he'll give me the time. And I'll think, and as long as there's more than 5 minutes, yeah, I'll say out loud, plenty of time. We'll Cadillac this thing in. And just, at that point, I slow down a little bit and pay a little bit more attention to what I'm doing. Usually, at that point, I'm either finished saucing or finished placing in the box, and I slow down, try to get a little less sloppy, take your picture, turn away from it, and look at the picture for a little extra time to make sure nothing's super out of place, and just slow the whole thing down at that point. Because that's where I'll retaste a piece of something to see if it needs a little more zing, do those things.
Right on, and that's a good piece of advice for everybody. You have to constantly be tasting everything and tasting your food and making sure that it's what you want, and that it tastes good. So yeah, that's a good point. Let's move on to gear a little bit. This is something I know that is something that's very important and very fun to you, because a lot of your YouTube videos are reviews of gear and things like that. And by the way, if you haven't checked out the Cookout Coach on YouTube, you need to do so. It's an amazing site. And
You're thinking about my thumbnails right now, aren't you?
oh my God, they're so funny. They're great, but at the same time, it's so funny because when we were in Morgantown, West Virginia, my brother had recently bought a char griller Acorn. And whenever I went to his house to help him, he said, he goes, I've been watching this guy on YouTube, and it was you. and and it was funny because you came over to our site in Morgantown, and my brother was sitting there, and he goes, oh my God, it's the Cookout Coach.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. It happens rarely that someone, and it's happened like twice this year, and that was one. And the other time couldn't have been any worse, because I was walking with Dave Dick, who loves to poke the bear, and literally this guy goes, "Hey, Steve," and I didn't recognize him. I said, "Hey, buddy." I was like, "Did I know?" No, but I watch channel. Can I take a picture? And I went, "Oh shit." And sure enough, 3 seconds later, I walk by and I get a buzz in my phone. And Dave had taken a picture of me and the guy taking a picture and posted it to the backyard group chat with all of our buddies. It's like, thanks, Dave. I already feel like an idiot when I do that anyway. So appreciate that.
That's funny. So, what's one of the best or most worthwhile investments that you've ever made in competition barbecue?
We are small time, but the best investment we've ever made was, oh man, I want to say the trailer. We run in a little 6x12 trailer, so our stuff doesn't get wet going there. But honestly, more than that is a cooker that you're comfortable with maintaining temperatures on. And I don't care what it is, because, like, for instance, I said I've changed cookers a bunch of times, and at one point in time I had a small offset, but when it gets to hopping the way small offsets work, small firebox, you've got to stay on top of them. Realistically, that was a poor choice for me because I was paying attention to other stuff. So, at that point, I built a cube. We call it, it's like a big cabinet cooker can hybrid thing, but I ran it off a fan because I could trust it at that point. And once I freed myself up, suddenly everything else got much tighter, and it was worth that trade-off.
Yeah, and that makes a big difference. I've cooked on the cube one time, and it's a great smoker. It's dangerous.
Well,
Like,
only if you don't know how to work the lid.
right, it could chop your arm off if you're
Yeah.
not. If you're not. But it is a neat cooker. But yeah, having that, making sure that you can maintain the right temperatures is so important.
Yeah. Now, the question for the absolute best bang for your buck investment I've ever made. I don't think anybody's ever said this on your podcast, but 4 2-foot sections of PVC pipe to raise your table up. I feel like I'm probably one of the minority here cooking not in a trailer these days, but if you're not and you're still cooking on tables, you got to raise that table up, because I'm a large man, and being bent over for that long, that back is just not going to hold up. It definitely wouldn't have held up this weekend. So to get it up to where you can stand up straight and do everything. That was the game changer. And it took me like 7 comps before I finally remembered to buy those stupid things. But once I did, everything got so much better.
When I'm cooking under a pop up, if I forget those, it's the worst situation. I drive to Lowe's and get more.
Yeah. So there was one time in 2019 where I went to a contest without ribs trimmed. And so I'm standing there on a table without that stuff, trimming. And by the end of it, like I'm doing as much of a split as I possibly can to lower my body to that table just because my back can't do it anymore. Basically, it was the worst experience ever. Like it was just terrible.
But I mean, as Kung Fu Panda, you should be able to accomplish such a maneuver.
I didn't think about that, but yeah, that was the most Kung Fu Panda thing I've ever done in a contest.
That was a new nickname that was assigned to Steve this weekend because he just reminds me of Po from Kung Fu Panda because he's always smiling and just happy. All right, so would you say the table legs are the purchase of $100 or less that's most positively impacted you? You got any more?
That one is great. Let's see. Yeah, no, I've heard other people say the cotton gloves. The cotton gloves are the biggest game changer at first in barbecue. And then if you're ever prepping or working on anything outside, the table legs are the number 2. Like just straight up, those are the best things you can possibly buy in barbecue.
No, I would agree. The cotton gloves underneath the nitrile gloves, it's a game changer because there's nothing more trustworthy than your hands.
Yeah.
And protecting them and grabbing shit without them is painful. I did that again this weekend. It's not good.
So when we were cooking the shade tree back in 18, I wasn't thinking about it. I just had the cottons on. I was like, I don't need nitrils. And back then I was separating the money muscle from the pork butt, and I was checking to see if they were done, and they were done. But I had it like a little bit unwrapped. And so I pick it up and move it to the table. Well, the juice had soaked into that cotton glove. And of course, at that point, you can't get it off. So I was basically napalming my fingers. So even if you don't think you need the nitrils on the cottons when you go in to grab something, go ahead and put them on, because if it gets into that cotton, you can't get it off fast enough.
Right. It's basically melting your skin. It's terrible. Yeah. Let's talk about people. When you hear the word successful in terms of barbecue, who's the first person that comes to mind?
I mean, so the first person that comes to mind is Myron Mixon, because he had a successful competition career. You know, it's debatable whether he is the winningest man in competition barbecue or not. I guess it depends on what sanctuary bodies. But he parlayed that into such the business side of things that it's, to me, that one's hard to argue. Now, if you want to talk about just barbecue competitions, I mean, Brad is making a pretty darn good argument for himself, coming up on a 3rd team of the year. Travis just had an incredible win ratio. I'll say Darren, but on the last episode, I heard you say you got tired of people saying Darren. But Darren and Tuffy, obviously.
I never said that. I just said everybody says Darren.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but yeah, I think overall, like if you had to pick just one, Myron still sells out cook schools like every single month now. And like, it's a business. And when he comes back and decides to play in competitions, he's still pretty darn effective if you give enough time. So I don't know. I think he's pretty darn successful.
Absolutely. So when you have a barbecue issue, whose counsel do you seek to help you fix that problem?
Oh, I call you Big Daddy. I usually call you first. Occasionally, I will text Corey from Fat Boys. I hate to bother people is my thing, and you know this. And the only reason I text you as much as I do now is because you told me what bothers you more than me bothering you was me saying, I'm sorry I'm bothering you.
You're just too nice. You're the nicest guy in the world.
Yeah, so I text Chris Shriver from Brother Uncle. He's been cooking with Childs this year, but he's sort of been one of the guys I go to since I started. Like, he was right in front of me at my first competition, and he was full of a lot of helpful information. I'll talk to Childs occasionally, and I talked to Lee Thompson, and actually sort of depends, but sometimes on the regular, from Pig Chicka Cow Cow, even though they're not competing anymore. He and I were on a barbecue show on Facebook 2 years ago. I was the YouTube guy, he was the competition guy, and he made the mistake of saying, hey, if you need anything, just let me know. So I started picking his brain. But very nice person. I always takes the time to answer my stupid questions like you do. So yeah, those are pretty much the folks that I go to if I have a question.
So, what's the most surprising thing to come out of competition barbecue for you?
This weekend, I'm pretty sure this weekend is the answer.
That can't be
No,
the answer, man. You've built an entire. You talked about people that have been successful in barbecue, and I would put you in that list.
so it, a surprising thing just out of barbecue is the fact that we have built, although it's sort of small, we've built a following on the internet. And so that's yeah. What surprised me about that is that I have friends who have tried to do the same thing and produce what I would consider better quality content that somehow just can't grab traction, and somehow we have grabbed some traction. So yeah, that surprises me every time I think about it. The other thing really is I didn't come into barbecue looking to make any friends. I wasn't looking not to, but we have what we call the Border Brothers, which is a group of guys from West Virginia and Virginia, and then we have a larger group of the Mid Atlantic backyard guys from PA and Maryland. A group of there's probably 20 of us that are extremely close now. And then we've extended that down to backyarders in Alabama. So like for backyarders that don't travel very much, I have a lot of. I always tell people you've got your work friends that you hang out with because you work with them, and then you've got the people you hang out with outside of work. And all the people I hang out with outside of work now are barbecuers from somewhere in the country. So that's kind of surprising.
It's pretty cool too, though. To have that network, and we've been lucky to have been a part of a couple of your guys' backyard events and stuff, and very gracious for you guys including us. And I really think the key to competition barbecue succeeding is getting you guys into the pro division. I really think that is a huge, huge thing moving forward that I really think can help level off the attrition that we're experiencing right now, and maybe even put barbecue back up on the rise.
Yeah, I one thing, like, not a whole lot of things bother me, but one thing that bothers me is I hear I love podcasts. I listen to your podcast whenever it comes out, and everybody has the same answer when you go, "What's missing from barbecue?" They all go, "Well, there's not camaraderie anymore. Everyone's in the trailer." And then some of them are at least honest enough to go, "But I'm not giving up my trailer." But then we used to have potlucks and this, that, and the other. And the whole time I'm listening to this, I'm like, if you would just come, like Luke has been to at least 2 of our backyard potlucks. And then after that,
Absolutely.
yeah. I mean, we have trailers. Granted, they're usually cargo trailers, but we have our trailer, but we hang out with each other. Till we don't get crazy. We take competition very seriously in the backyard, or I guess I did when I was in the backyard. Those days are over. But
Wow.
the rest of the guys take it. You told me I can't go back. It's very serious. But I mean, we still hang out, till at least some hour. Now, some of them hang out all night and score very well still. But I'm sort of an early sleeper. But we talk to each other constantly. We go there to see each other. That camaraderie is there. It's just you got to look for it. You got to be part of it. I guess you got to be the change, right?
Absolutely. I 100% agree. So, what advice would you give to somebody who's looking to enter the world of competition barbecue?
So you got to, first of all, you got to do it. If you want to be successful, you got to practice. Like, get some information. There's plenty of information out there wherever you want to get it. Practice, show up. And the biggest thing, though, is talk to people, because like I said, we have, like, I have a large group of friends that we all talk to each other about this, and I don't know that any of us really hold much secret back from each other, because we're all well aware that we're all pretty much running the same stuff, and it's all in your technique and how you cook it, and we understand that, and I'm sure you guys understand that. And I'm assuming my network will hopefully it's going to expand to some more Master Series teams here shortly. But yeah, if you go and you talk to anybody, tell them where you're struggling, we're gonna help you out. And then, like I said, before you know it, I've always heard about this mythical group chat that exists with a lot of these Master Series teams. That we have a same thing in the Mid Atlantic with some really high scoring, granted the 2 meat cooks, but 2 meat cooks, where if you have an issue, we'll square you away. Literally, day 1 of their banner this year, I was walking back with Debo, who right now is probably the hottest backyard cook in the country. And he goes, "Oh man, chicken was terrible. It was dark." And so we're walking back, and the whole 2 minutes back, I'm trying to help him like debug what happened today in his chicken, knowing that he's pretty much my number one competitor there. Then he proceeds to win chicken like a real dick. But yeah, that's how we roll. He's having an issue, and I'm gonna try to help him figure it out.
He's another one that he's got to make the jump. He's
It's time.
it's time. He's really good. Super nice guy. Like, you want to dislike him, but you can't.
You can't.
You can't do it. What advice should the new cook ignore?
I don't know if you should ignore it, but take with a grain of salt any finishing temperature somebody tells you, because it's all going to be so highly dependent on how you cook and what you cook on. Pay attention to it because it'll get you in the ballpark, but you've got to do the work and figure out what temperature your pit actually finishes a piece of meat at. Because that's going to be your pit plus your technique. And if you blindly follow what somebody tells you who's hot and fast and you're low and slow still, you're going to have a bad day.
Yeah, and I mean, we're all guilty of that. You get frustrated and you get a piece of advice and you're like, "Oh, I'm going to do that." And, you just have to stay in your lane and keep yourself grounded, really.
Yeah, man. The biggest thing I would tell a new team is trust your system. Even when I was like 7 or 8 comps in, I would be there and I would know my ribs don't go on until 8 o'clock. And I would see people putting the ribs on at like 7:30 or 7. And you start to get the butterflies and you go, "Oh man, am I doing this wrong? Am I screwing this up? Do I need to do?" But just like, you got to stay in your lane. You got to run your race. And because if you start changing stuff in the middle of it, then it's hard to remember that data to go ahead and make changes after the fact once you see the final result.
Right. That's the most important thing. You got to just stay in your lane and do what you do. Cool, man. Well, this has been fun. Not as fun as these rapid fire questions are going to be. What do you see about barbecue on social media that upsets or bothers you?
Okay. So let's go. So what really annoys me is when, let's call them older iconic members of the barbecue community, want to jump in and only comment whenever people are talking about backyard stuff and sort of just deuce all over it. It's like, you're the same people who want to tell me that you're missing camaraderie. And I told you there's camaraderie in the backyard, and it's coming up. And in the Mid-Atlantic, I'm probably one of the first ones to come out of the big group that we have, but there's going to be 3 or 4 more next year. And we're going to start replacing that attrition, like you said. So how about, if you're an iconic name or you're a representative of a big, piece of competition barbecue, how about you just, try to help foster that growth instead of trying to be a jerk and talk about how backyard, you're not the same as a pro cook. You're a Ford or a Buick versus a NASCAR's. If you're telling me we're that far apart, I don't believe I can ever get there. So how about you don't do that?
That's a great point. We might have covered this one with your extensive list of gas station food.
Yeah.
But do you have a favorite post-competition meal?
So post-competition meal, more often than not, is Subway, actually. And honestly, I think a lot of that's just born out of most of the backyard competitions have us going up 68. And when you come back down 68, right before you hit Cumberland, which anybody who knows, Cumberland really sucks to drive through. Right before you get there, there's a pilot with a Subway in it. So we stop, we get fuel, and we get Subway. And it's not a salad, but it's kind of lighter. It's kind of cool and a little refreshing. It's good.
And it has vegetables on it. That's the one thing that I always want after a competition.
Yeah.
Gotta have it. Except for this past weekend, we made Lee Hickle buy dinner on Sunday night, and we got a crap ton of chicken wings that were, they were interesting.
Yeah.
Yep. Do you have a favorite present that you like to give to people?
So if it's honestly it's going to sound terrible, but I like to give people barbecue, and yeah, obvious, I know, but if you really think about it, when you first learn to barbecue, you suck at the beginning, right? And when you finally get to the point where you're pretty good and you can cook something that you would get in, say, your favorite restaurant or better, you instantly invite everybody over to share that with them. Well, then as comp barbecue cooks, we kind of get a little jaded on our stuff, right? You take a bite of chicken and it's amazing in the general scheme of things, but you're like, this isn't going to score well today. This is terrible. Well, take last year with COVID, not seeing anybody. This year starting at Hagerstown in the spring, I had like 6 coworkers come out, and I didn't have a great cook that day. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. And I fed them this food because I was like, yeah, I got leftovers. Here you go. And they were, I don't want to say blown away because that sounds kind of jerky, but they were really happy to have that barbecue. And I got to think about it. I was like, this is something they can't really get anywhere. They're in, there's not a whole lot of barbecue around. They can't get this somewhere. This is something special that, I just spent hours making, and until I do it again, they're not going to have it again. So there's something really special to me just about sharing that food, something you've put that much time and love into. And that's really fun to me. That sort of put it all back into perspective for me of why I started cooking barbecue, was to share it with people like that.
No, that's pretty cool, dude. I do the same thing. It brings me joy to watch somebody just go crazy over a piece of food. So it's good for them, but selfishly it makes me feel better about myself. So
I get that.
If you could have a giant billboard somewhere with a message on it, getting the message out to millions of people, what would it say and why?
Probably say something stupid like calm down or take a nap, because everybody just all the time. That's going back to our buddy Dave Dick. He loves to just trigger people and set them off and get them in a frenzy. And then in the background, he and I will be talking and be like, this is so dumb. Why does this person even care? And I was like, I don't know, Dave. I don't know why you like to do that, but you do. It's like, just calm down, take a breath. This is not important at all. Nothing important is happening here. And especially with the cesspool that is social media right now, everybody's mad all the time. Just calm down, go take a nap.
Calm down, take a nap. Words of advice from Backyard Steve. Lastly, and I usually only ask this one because of people that I'm really close to, what's an unusual habit or an absurd thing that you love? Doesn't have to be barbecue related.
Yeah. So probably, I don't know if it's that absurd. I don't think it's absurd, but when I love pickles, but even more than that, I love pickle juice. So I will try to eat pickles in the pickle jar, but then like secretly, so my wife doesn't see me, so I'm not ashamed. I drink the pickle juice, but I only drink the pickle juice down to the amount of pickles that I've eaten so that it doesn't look too suspicious. So I drink my pickle juice in shame, and that's probably a little absurd.
But
like
completely ridiculous.
Yeah. Like when you go to the bar, I'll order a pickle back just to get the pickle juice, and they pull out the pickle juice bottle. I'm like, man, can I just order that? You just give me that. I'll just sip on it all night.
What's wrong with you?
I don't know.
Cool, man. Well, thank you for taking the time. Welcome to the Pro Division. And I hope that your success this weekend inspires a bunch of other people to jump up, because we need you. We need you in the Pro Division, and we need the enthusiasm. We need the camaraderie. We need all of that back up this way. Super proud of you again. Tell people where they can find you online.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, so if you want to find me online, the easiest place is to go to YouTube and search for Cookout Coach. I'm also on Facebook, and I'm also on Instagram. If you ask me questions, any of those locations, I'll generally get back to you. If you have a question you really want me to answer, hit Facebook or Instagram, because honestly, at this point, the YouTube comments they're tricky to keep them all in check. But if you actually have a question, I'll do everything I can to help you out for sure. And Luke, thanks for having me on here, man. It's been awesome.
Absolutely, dude. Thank you. And can't wait to see you again soon.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for listening to Pitmaster, an Old Virginia Smoke podcast. Be sure to subscribe and like the podcast, rate the podcast, and share it out with all your friends. Also be sure to check out the Old Virginia Smoke YouTube channel as well. We will have another episode for you next week. For companies interested in advertising, please contact Old Virginia Smoke directly via www.oldvirginiasmoke.com. Pitmaster, an Old Virginia Smoke podcast, is edited by Chris Sedenka. Pitmaster, an Old Virginia Smoke podcast is a property of Old Virginia Smoke LLC. All rights reserved. Copyright 2021.
Yes, Old Virginia Smoke.